I've got 10 clients in the room. Matter of fact, Laura and Amy came up. Laura Whitaker is with Extra Special People. Matter of fact, I wrote the entire last chapter and summed up the entire Major Gifts Ramp Up model, talking about Jerry Strickland and Carter Strickland, their donor, the super consultant Aimee Vance, and the strong CEO, Laura Whitaker. Now here's what I've got here. Laura attended a Major Gifts Ramp Up event in, I think, may have been Gainesville, Georgia. I don't know. It was Gainesville, Georgia. And Laura is just youthful as far as I'm concerned. She is a youthful CEO. But here's what happened. The CEO at the nonprofit that she was volunteering at passed away. And the family was making a decision as to whether or not they were going to continue on with this legacy or let it appropriately dissolve and say that it had accomplished its goals. And Laura, not knowing any better, just went out in the community without apology and raised tens of thousands of dollars to keep it going. And they said, would you like to be the executive director? I'm fond of saying that Laura didn't know that this stuff didn't work, so she just went out and did it. And we were able to get a hold of her and be part of her life through Aimee Vance, one of my dear friends. Matter of fact, Amy and I have been serving together for 25 years. Amy was one of my first clients, and we began serving other nonprofits through this model. So you put the two of them together. Ladies, would you mind explaining what happened with your donor scope file and your awareness event?
Well, we went through the whole process of looking for donors, and we had this discussion. We were in Athens, Georgia, which is a college town, and are there going to be enough people in town, and can we do this? Well, sure enough, there were 2,500 millionaires in the area. And so we purchased that list. We did not do any overlay. You had a pretty small internal list.
You just downloaded names.
We just downloaded names, and we had 2,500. There was a great, we are always talking about, Jimmy will tell stories about looking for a creative venue. The facility that they had was not large enough to do an event, which is why she needed to do Major Gifts Ramp Up. So there was a new theater in town, not new actually, it was a renovation in this cute little square area of Athens, Georgia, called Athens, the Georgia Theater. And it had been, you tell the story.
Well, I remember sitting here listening to Jimmy and Amy talk about all these cool places that they did their awareness events in New York and at the jail, and I'm like, well, you know, I work with kids with developmental disabilities, and the last place that people want to go if they don't have experience with people with developmental disabilities is to a facility to see people with developmental disabilities. You can't pay somebody to go see a child in a wheelchair. You just can't do it. And I can say that because I work with them every day. So I thought, where in Athens, Georgia are we going to have this awareness event that I can bring people to see kids with developmental disabilities? Well, along this process, our big historic theater that had been there for years, it used to be the old YMCA, burned down. It was like the talk of the town. The entire thing completely imploded and burnt down. And so over the course of this process, they were rebuilding this theater. And there was all this fundraising along with, and so I said, okay, I'm going to capitalize on this marketing of Georgia Theater, and I'm going to try to host a sit-down lunch. And so I went to the owner and said, would you let us use your facility? And he said, yeah, sure. We're going to open it this date, in October was the time. And I was like, okay, I hope it's ready in time. And he said, but you can't put tables on this floor. It slopes like this. And I said, well, can you let me try? And he said, sure, you can try. And sure enough, we were the first event that they hosted there after they opened. And they now host weddings and events there all the time because two crazy girls tried it out and put some tables, and it actually worked. So that's where we held our event.
Yeah, it was great. So we had a great design team that made an invitation. They had the Georgia Theater, some curtains.
And if I may, when Laura took over as CEO, not executive director, as CEO in my estimation, their budget was, it started out with $150,000. When she got it, it was $180,000 a year. So I'm letting you know that what she was able to accomplish is accessible to you with your size budgets. Thank you.
So we sent out 2,500 invitations and crossed our fingers. We really did. And as you know, in today's market, it's hard to get people to RSVP. And we were biting our nails. But sure enough, we got to the event, and it was at lunchtime. I think it started at 11:30, and at 11 o'clock, people started showing up. And they kept coming, and they kept coming, and they kept coming. and it was standing room only. We didn't have enough chairs. We didn't have enough tables. There were people. There was a balcony upstairs that kind of ran around the theater, and they just kept coming. And we were so excited. We were so excited.
Now, with that being said, what do you think the count was then?
It was close to, between 250 and 300
Okay.
people. Yeah, and
So-
a lot of individuals, like you said.
They rented the donor scope file. They sent out a creative invitation. They had a non-fundraising event during a non-fundraising awareness event during the lunch hour, and their return was higher because their town was smaller. Okay, just know that a little bit. That was a factor here. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what's interesting. This is. I am fond of saying, matter of fact, I wrote in the book, Laura sat down, went back to her board and said, after coming to Major Gets Ramp Up, fundraising finally made sense to me. It kind of begins here and it ends here, and here's all the things that you can do in between. Now, friends, here's what's great. I want you to know that there's counselor after Hall Powell's here. Alex Young is here. Aimee Vance is here. Nick's here. There's all sorts of counselors here, and they're going to tell you that this model up to this point is A plus B plus C plus D equals E. If you do this up to this point, what we're taking, you're always going to end up with a group of zillionaires, brand new, in the room. We can always get you to that point. Here's what's great. She was fearless. She was fearless. And she went out and decided that after those individuals showed up for the first time and had an amazing experience, the gift of extra special people, developmentally disabled children, the authority that she was, and she's got this whole Laura Whitaker blonde thing, kid thing going. They just decided, the community just decided that they adored her a little bit. And here's what she did. She went out and built relationships with them. Only a few years later now, her budget is $600,000 a year, sustained. But I forgot to tell you, in that same 3 or 4 year period, she also raised an additional $3 million and has completely moved and expanded her facilities. Expand on that for us, Laura.
Mention too that Athens, Georgia has more nonprofits per capita than any other city in the United States. So when we started this process, we had people, our local United Way, who I'm dear friends with now, told us, you didn't do a feasibility study. There is absolutely no way that you will raise $3 million. You just can't do it. And so we had our challenge. I mean, we had.
No, I want you to say that again, friends. Did you hear what she said, Holly Hall? They said to her, if you don't do a feasibility study, who do you think you are? Let no man despise your youth. That's what you got going here. You wacky kid, you can't raise $3 million without a feasibility study.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I remember the phone call from Laura that day. They said, I met with United Way, and she was so upset because they had said to her, well, good luck with that. Nobody else.
Present United Ways accepted,
Yeah.
naturally. Naturally.
And she said she's dear friends with
them now on the search committee for the new president. So, so we definitely had our work cut out for us. But like Jimmy said, I didn't know any other way to do it, and I had Aimee's support. And in terms of our capital campaign, a lot of the success of our awareness event had to do with the venue. It had to do with the hosts. We have legendary coaches in Athens, Georgia. Vince Dooley, who was over at Auburn, and then Coach UGA. We used that opportunity that we have in Athens to pull people in. And what's amazing that people love to lend their name. They don't have to write a check. All they have to do is lend their name, and they feel really good that they have done something for your organization. So lending your name wasn't difficult for us. We had a bunch of people on our invitation. But what's neat about today is that I have with me Kelly McCabe, wave Kelly. And Kelly is my success story. Kelly's husband was at the awareness event at the Georgia Theater in October of 2011 and they both came. Kelly didn't want to come because, again, she wasn't familiar at the time with people with developmental disabilities, and she came to our signature event, which I'm sure you'll talk about. Kelly and Tim became donors of ours. They were on that list that was rented, so they just received an invitation in the mail, had no idea what ESP was, came to the awareness event, came to the signature event, became donors of ours, is now our development member on our board and is here with me today. So she's a full circle example of how the process has worked. And ESP currently operates in 1,600 square feet. We serve 300 families in an 8-county area. Our dream that we dreamt up with Amy's help and our board was a new facility so we could serve the 2,000 children in the area that could use ESP services. We dreamt that up. We built our case for support. We shared that dream. Our children shared that dream at the awareness event. And I want to be clear about that because they were the ones that shared the message of what ESP meant to them. And that was the most powerful part. I could speak, Amy could speak, the host could speak, but it was really the children that helped share that message. I think that was powerful. And then we went on from there.
And where are we now? What's our facility now?
We broke ground in June. We are building a 15,000 square foot facility right next to our current facility. I was actually remembering this on the way. Amy saying, well, we really need to get our land donated. And I thought, there's no way. We went through this process. 2 years later, the VFW that owns the land right next to our current facility came to us and said, what if we donated our land to you? And they said we would love nothing more than to honor our fathers in war that fought in war than to give this land to these children. And so the land was donated. We raised the money that we needed to raise to build the building. And on top of that, because of the awareness of this campaign and this success, part of our mission is to teach people in the community how to appropriately engage people with developmental disabilities. So our marketing was a big part of our campaign. We had someone come to us and say, we want to donate 70 acres of land so that you can have a residential camp. And so we now have 70 acres of land on top of a building project, and we are expected to finish in May. And we are looking to go through this process again so that we can build a fully accessible, wheelchair accessible camp out on our new 70 acres.
It's called Camp what?
It's called Camp Hooray.
Would you give him a hand, please?